For the last few weeks, we've been involved in a series of lessons on the book of Revelation. And this morning, we are in chapter 13. If you would be turning in your Bibles to Revelation chapter 13, that's where we'll be starting. Last week in chapter 12, I put forth the idea that what we're really looking at is the deeper conflict that the book is getting at. A large chunk of the first 11 chapters in the book of Revelation are focused specifically on the judgments of the enemies of God. And you have the 7 seals and you have the 7 trumpets. You have, in contrast to that, you have the people of God who have the seal on their forehead, who are represented as witnesses testifying to Jesus Christ. And there really wasn't a lot of specific information in those first 11 chapters about who these enemies were. But nevertheless, John does single out who the main enemy of the book is, and when we start getting to chapter 12 and onward. And from chapter 12 onwards, the main enemy of the book is singled out. But there's this long-standing debate among people of whether the book is talking about the fall of Jerusalem and ethnic Judaism's hostile response to Christianity, or whether the book is talking about the fall of Rome and the emperor cult and their attempt to force Christians to burn that little pinch of incense to Caesar. And both of those were very real conflicts that existed for the early Christians. So it's not like neither one of those things were issues. The question is, which one of those things is Revelation talking about? But regardless of what you think of the historical circumstances, whether the main enemy is Jerusalem or Rome, I must remind you that the real main enemy of the book of Revelation was introduced in chapter 12, represented by a great red dragon with 7 heads called Satan. Satan is the main enemy of God's people. He has always been, he always will be until God destroys him. The real mastermind of God's enemies is represented by the great red dragon. And in chapter 12, John has already told us how that story ends. Satan is defeated. He is thrown out of heaven. He is now on the earth, but that is just a temporary measure. In verse 12 of chapter 12, it says that he has only a short time. Satan has already lost. It's just a matter of playing it out now. I don't know how many people, I don't think a lot of people here play video games, but whenever you're playing like a strategy campaign, there's a point in the game at which you've lost. And it's just a matter of him destroying all of your soldiers and buildings and other things. There's a point in a game of chess where you know that you've lost, and it's just a matter of playing out a very long end game where he puts you in checkmate. And that is the issue with Satan here. Satan has already lost. We're just playing it out. The end of the story is already over. Satan is simply acting at this point out of spite to take as many of us down with him as he can, to hedge his losses as best as he can. Satan could not destroy the child that was born of the woman. He could not destroy Christ. Even when Christ was dead, Christ rose from the dead, so that didn't work. Christ could not destroy the woman who represents, Israel, the universal church, in all of her glory. So Satan therefore turns his attention to the woman's children. He turns his attention to individual Christians in hopes of coercing some of them to fall away, of convincing some of them to renounce their faith. That is where chapter 13 brings us. And admittedly, it's remember that these chapter divisions are placed here by men. This is really one continuous narrative, and chapter 13 is just picking up where chapter 12 left off. The dragon has fallen to earth, and in chapter 13 it says the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore, and then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed, and the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. They worshiped the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? And who is able to wage war with him?" There was given to him a mouth, speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given to him. He opened his mouth in blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation was given to him. All who dwell on the earth will worship him. Everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone kills with the sword he must be killed. Here is the perseverance and faith of the saints. Now there's a second beast that we're going to read about in a minute, but this beast comes out of the sea, and he's got 10 horns, he's got 7 heads, he's got 10 diadems. Diadem is just a big word for a crown. We used it a bunch in the song we just sang, bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. Well, here this beast is wearing a diadem. He's wearing like 10 of them. And on his heads are written blasphemous names. This beast is like a leopard with bear's feet and a lion's mouth. He receives his power and his authority from Satan. And you want... This is one of those instances where you wish you had PowerPoint so you could put up what a picture of this thing must have looked like. But regardless, visualize this because this is important. This beast, John could be talking about how, there's a lot of people out there who are trying to get us to renounce our faith. Or he could say there's a big 7-headed, 10-horned beast that wants to kill you. Which one of those puts an image in your head? That's why John expresses it this way. We must see this imagery. We must visualize it. And of course, John isn't just making this imagery up off the top of his head. He's actually borrowing this image from the Old Testament and kind of adapting it a little bit. In fact, this brings us back to Daniel chapter 7. I've been saying all along that Revelation is really a commentary on Daniel 7. It's really kind of an inspired commentary on that. Namely, about the destruction of earthly kingdoms and the establishment of Christ's kingdom. Let's read that for a second here. Daniel 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions in his mind as he lay on his bed. Then he wrote the dream down and related the following summary of it. Daniel said, I was looking in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. You remember how the beast in Revelation comes out of a sea? The sea's the starting point here too. And 4 great beasts were coming up from the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had the wings of an eagle. I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. And a human mind was also given to it. Behold, another beast, a second one, resembling a bear. And it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. And thus they said to it, Arise, devour much meat. After this I kept looking, and behold, another one, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I kept looking in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrifying and extremely strong, and it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. While I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them. 3 of the first horns were pulled out from the roots before it, and behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great boasts. I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His vesture was like white snow, the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames, its wheels were a burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were attending him, and myriads upon myriads. The court sat, and the books were open. I kept looking because of the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain, and its body was destroyed and given to the burning fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time. I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. He came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. Now, there's a lot to take in there. But you notice those 4 beasts, it's like you have the one like the lion, the bear, the leopard, and how they all get combined together and smushed together into this one super beast in Revelation 13. And of course Daniel 7 goes on to explain that these 4 beasts really represent 4 world kingdoms. And in the days of the 4th one, God would set up his kingdom that would never be destroyed. Now Daniel doesn't name the kingdoms, but history tells us that there was Babylon, and then there was Medo-Persia, and then there was Greece, and then there was Rome. And Rome is the fourth beast. Rome is the iron legs on the statue in Daniel 2. Rome is the one that is taking this place here. And so I think it's fair to say that yes, this beast in Revelation 13 does represent and personify the Roman Empire. So this is just, but you'll notice how it's not limited to that. Because, all the beasts have been kind of smushed together in this a little bit. And that this beast's power extends, to all who dwell on the earth. There is a sense in which, anytime Satan raises up a nation to fight against God's people, anytime Satan raises up another kingdom to do his bidding, he is just raising up another big, ugly, nasty beast to get people to worship it. And this is, this may be immediately personified in Rome in Revelation, but Satan can do all sorts of stuff with that today, can he not? Can Satan raise up a kingdom to do his bidding? Well, we're going to talk about that as we go throughout the book, but I do think it's possible that Satan, once he is released from his bonds and his imprisonment and summons, Gog and Magog, the nations, you see that same kind of thing going on in Revelation 20 as well. But the point is not that Satan can do this, but the fact that God will ultimately destroy him and destroy any nation that he raises up to fight against God's people. Now, the beast has, he comes out of the sea. He has 10 horns, just like Daniel 7. He has a lot of other things in common. He's making war with the saints. But, spoiler alert, Daniel 7 also tells you how this beast gets killed. He's thrown into fire. How does Revelation end? Well, the beast gets thrown into a lake of fire. And later on, Satan's thrown into the lake of fire. So that's, his death personifies and typifies Satan's death. But this beast right now in Revelation 13, he appears unconquerable. He appears insurmountable. No one can fight the beast. No one can wage war with him. He's given power to persecute the saints for 42 months. There's that number of 3.5 years that keeps popping up in various incarnations since chapter 11. In fact, back in chapter 11 and verse 7, when we had the two witnesses, who killed the witnesses? It says that the beast killed the witnesses. The beast would make war with them, comes up out of the abyss, makes war with them and overcomes them and kills them. Another sign that, we probably shouldn't be reading the text in a strict chronological order. We see that this beast is blaspheming the name of God. He is blaspheming the tabernacle. He is saying things about God that are not true. And making himself out to be a God of sorts. To have the answers that only Christ, the King of Kings, has. The beast is the primary persecutor that Revelation is talking about. And this is, in my mind, one of the critical factors that tips the scales against the Jerusalem view, is because if the beast represents the Roman Empire, then the date the book was written makes little difference. This is the one who is making war with the saints. This is the one whom everyone dwelling on the earth is worshiping, minus those whose names are in the book of life. If there is a specific historical situation behind this scene, it is clearly describing the Roman Empire and the connected emperor cult. But it gets better. Well, it gets worse than that, though. There's another beast. In verse 11, I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. He performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given to him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak, and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. And he causes all, the small and the great, and the rich and the poor, and the free men and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark, neither the name of the beast or the number of his name. And here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. The second beast is later called a false prophet in Revelation 19 and verse 20. For the rest of the book, the first beast gets called the beast, and the second beast gets called the false prophet, because he's the one that's causing everybody to worship beast number 1. He comes from the earth instead of the sea. I don't know why that's significant, but it's just something to note. He has 2 horns like a lamb. He has the voice of a dragon, which suggests that he is speaking ultimately satanic words, the words of the devil. And he has the authority of the first beast. And he has one job to do. And his job is to get everybody else on the earth to worship the first beast. He imitates prophetic signs in verse 13. Well, this is something that the law had warned against in Deuteronomy 13 and verses 1 through 5. That if a prophet or a dreamer of dreams comes and he tells you a sign, and that sign comes true, and then he tells you to go worship other gods, do you listen to him? No! The law said you will not listen to him. The Lord is testing you to see if you really do love the Lord with all your heart. Even if he predicts something that comes true, even if he performs a miracle that comes true, if he tells you to do what God has not said, if he tells you to worship other gods, you shall not listen to him or be afraid of him. The law commanded that such one was to be put to death. But in spite of that law, what happens? These signs mislead the earth dwellers. He deceives those who dwell on the earth, verse 14, because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast. People are going to be misled by this. Verse 15, we have ventriloquism going on. He makes the statue of the beast talk. And those who do not worship the beast are killed. This is the persecution. This is Satan's in-game plan. Satan has formed a coalition of beasts that seem unstoppable in his efforts to make war against the saints and in an effort to get them to renounce their faith, to renounce their trust in the Lamb, and to join his side. Because it's just so much easier to join the side of the beast and worship the beast than it is to stay on the side of the Lamb and suffer death and persecution and distress. And then everybody gets a mark. The small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slave. As in chapter 7, when the people of God were sealed, the 144,000 were sealed, all the people who are not of God are also sealed with a mark. And the mark is clearly intended to show loyalty to the beast. Nobody can buy or sell or trade without the mark. Now you think that could happen, the government's going to put some kind of economic restrictions if you don't abide by these regulations, if you don't abide by these laws. And the number is 666. Popular media loves that number. They love getting stuff to add up to that number. Even that issue between the Jerusalem view and the Rome view, or the early date and the late date, it's fun how people always get 666 to add up to whatever they want. Some people get it to add up to Nero, and that's cited as evidence for the early date. Some people get it to add up to Domitian, and that's cited as evidence for the late date. So people have gotten it to add up to everything from Hitler to Deutschland, United States of America. I got a list of things here that they've gotten it to add up to. U.S. of America, papacy, Bill Gates, Martin Luther, Kennedy, Santa Claus, New York, Internet, Al Gore, even Holy Bible. You think about that. They even got it to add up to Ronald Reagan. I'm not going to get into that there, but the sheer multiplicity of answers might make the method a little questionable, don't you think? It assumes that John wants us to convert all the numbers into letters, he wants us to take something, convert the letters into numbers, and then add them all up, and somehow you get 666. Well, there's a lot of stuff that you can get to add up to it. I know one Bible class teacher, he told his class, everybody in his class was supposed to work out a way to get their own name to add up to this. And they almost all did it. It shows something right there about the danger of making too much of numbers, and this is what they call gematria, where numbers and letters are substituted for each other. But I don't think that's what John intended. A more likely explanation, and by all means, I'm not totally sold on this, but you can take it and think about it, is that since 7 tends to denote the divine throughout Revelation, and 6 is less than 7 because it is less than divine, it is the number of man, as John says. And because, threefold repetitions tend to be the way that Revelation expresses things in superlatives, like God is called holy, holy, holy. Later on you have the woe, 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 repetitions like that. Here we have, 666, the number of man. Because that's what this beast is. He's just a man. He's pretending to be God. He's got 7 heads. He's got all 10 horns. He's got all this perfection about him. But at the end of the day, he's just a man. Don't be fooled. Don't buy into it. That's to me is the simplest explanation. I have a hard time getting excited about all these horror movies that want to draw 666 on things, and make random applications about demon possession. I think people make far too much out of that number than what's there. That's wisdom right there. The beast is just a man. He's just another ugly kingdom of men, a puppet of Satan doing the dragon's bidding. But there's an alternative to that. It starts in chapter 14. Then I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his name and the name of his Father written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven like the sound of many waters and like the sound of loud thunder. And the voice which I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who have been purchased from the earth. These are the ones who have not been defiled with women, for they have kept themselves chaste. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been purchased from among men as firstfruits to God and to the Lamb. And no lie was found in their mouth. They are blameless. Now, right away, we've seen the Lamb before. The Lamb is Christ. We've seen the 144,000 before. They were sealed in chapter 7. That's not a literal number. That's a symbolic number for the people of God. And they sing a song. What kind of warfare is this? Our response to the threats is to sing a song. We're not given the words to this song because nobody can learn this song except the people of God, it says. And it's a new song in every sense of the word, like in chapter 5 and verse 9. The Old Testament is replete with references, with calls for the people of God to sing a new song, usually in the context of God's deliverance or kingship. These 144,000, they have the name of God on their forehead. They've not been defiled with women. In other words, they've not committed adultery. And because this is Revelation and everything's symbolic, we're probably talking about spiritual adultery. These people represent the bride of Christ, whom Christ desires to present holy and blameless, without spot or blemish. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They have been purchased as first fruits. There is no lie in their mouths. Contrasted with Revelation 21 verse 8, where all liars burn in the lake of fire. And the reason we're doing these 2 chapters together is because we're supposed to see the contrast between the beast and the lamb. We're supposed to see the 2 alternatives that are offered to us at this point. The beast takes his authority from the dragon, but the lamb takes his authority from the Father. The beast had a mortal wound, but it was healed, just as the lamb is standing as if slain. The beast has blasphemous names written on him, but the lamb also has names written on him. We've seen that elsewhere. About the beast, they asked a question. Who is like the beast? The people of the earth say. And they think there's nothing better than the beast. Well, there was a question asked prior to the lamb's appearance as well. When God held the book in his hand, and they said, who is worthy to open this book? Well, the lamb is worthy. So who is like the lamb, we should ask. The beast's name is like a mystery, and the same thing with the lamb. His name is unknown. Both of them wear many diadems. Both of them have their followers marked on the forehead. Both of them have followers from every tribe and nation and tongue. These are the alternatives that are presented to us. But there's a difference between the two. And one is that the main difference is that the lamb's going to win, and the beast is not. Then 3 angels appear, 3 messengers. I saw another angel flying in mid-heaven, having an eternal gospel to preach to those who live on the earth, and to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. And he said with a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and the springs of waters. This angel has a gospel. What is a gospel? A gospel is good news. And this good news is what? Fear God. Give him glory. This good news also includes a comment about how the hour of judgment has come. You think judgment is good news? Well, in this case it is. Because it's a judgment on those who are persecuting the people of God, who are causing them to suffer, who are making war with them. Make no mistake about it. We are in a war. And any news of the enemy's defeat is good news. It is a gospel, an eternal gospel. The second angel appears in verse 8. Another angel, a second one, followed, saying, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who has made all the nations drink of the wine of the passion of her immorality. Babylon is the first time Babylon gets mentioned in the text of Revelation. He's quoting here from Isaiah 21 and verse 9, one of Isaiah's oracles against the pagan nations. And what is Babylon? Well, Babylon's the prototypical world city, is it not? Babylon is the city that man built because he wanted to make a name for himself. And God confounded his language upon that occasion. Babylon is the first of the world kingdoms that got presented in Daniel 2 and in Daniel 7. Here, Babylon is the city. Later on in chapter 17 and 18, she is the great city who sits at the heart of the beast's empire, who sits up on top of the beast, Rome herself. But the angel doesn't talk about what a great city she is. He talks about how she's going to fall. Fallen is Babylon the Great. This is what they call a proleptic statement. It means that he's telling you the end of the story before it happens. We don't like spoilers, but Revelation is full of spoilers before you get to the end. It's like reading, by the way, the beast is going to die, and the harlot's going to die, and Satan's going to die. Just in case you didn't know. It's all over Revelation. And that's the point. We know the end of the story before it happens. We know the punchline to the joke before it is told. Babylon had made all the nations drink of the wine of her fornication, contrasted with the people of God, who were not defiled by fornication. And note how the people who drink Babylon's wine are equivalent with those who worship the beast. John's talking about the same group of people here. And then the third angel appears in verses 9 through 13. Another angel, a third one, followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast in his image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he also will drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is mixed in full strength in the cup of his anger. He will be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. They have no rest, day and night, those who worship the beast in his image and whoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the perseverance of the saints who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus." I heard a voice from heaven saying, "Write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, so that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow with them." You notice that statement in verse 12 we've seen already. This is the perseverance of the saints. This is the endurance of the saints. I think the New American Standard might be the only version that actually says perseverance of the saints. It's interesting that that wording was chosen. The Bible only mentions this expression once. But it's not the same kind of perseverance you find in the tulip. It's the you're not talking about this concept of people being once saved, always saved. It's talking about endurance. That those who endure, those who persevere to the end, are those who will be saved. Those who keep the commandments of God. Those who keep their faith in Jesus. And the nations that drink Babylon's cup of fornication will now drink God's cup of wrath. Now, the cup of wrath is really its own sermon. There's so much on it in the Old Testament. And it's based on a host of Old Testament passages. I'll read one for you in Jeremiah chapter 25 and verses 15 and 16. It says that, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, said to me, Take this cup of the wine of wrath from my hand and cause all the nations to whom I send you to drink it. They will drink and stagger and go mad because of the sword that I will send among them." The cup of wrath is an image in the prophets designed to show how the nations will become drunk from God's wrath and be destroyed in that way. And when Jesus prayed for the cup to pass from him in the Garden of Gethsemane, he's talking about this. He's talking about this cup of wrath. Because we all deserve to drink of it, but Jesus drank that cup for our sakes. But those who refuse Jesus, those who choose the way of the beast, the way of Babylon, the way of the world, they are essentially choosing to drink the cup of wrath for themselves. They decide that Jesus is taking the cup for them is not enough. They want to take the cup for themselves now. And drinking the cup of wrath results in eternal torment. In verse 9 it says that they will be... in verse 10 it says that they will be tormented with fire and brimstone. That's like Sodom and Gomorrah. In the presence of the Lamb and in his holy angels. It says in verse 11, "The smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever." A quote from Isaiah 34 and verse 10. Judgment's not something that you can get through and then it's over with. It's something, this is the message of hell. Hell is a very real thing, and it is forever. It's not just a temporary measure like these persecutions are. It's something that's going to last forever. It says there is no rest. They have no rest day and night, those who worship the beast in his image. As it says in the Psalm 95 and verse 11, As I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. God desired for man to enter his rest from the beginning when he created the world and rested on the seventh day. And even now in Hebrews 4, he pleads with us, saying that there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For those who worship the beast, those who ally themselves with the world, those who don't hold to the teaching of the Lamb, of Jesus Christ, there's no rest for them. There is no Sabbath rest for them because they are not the people of God. But by contrast, in verse 12 and 13, the Spirit promises rest to those who die in the Lord. Blessed are those who die in the Lord from now on, yes, says the Spirit, so that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them. There's a lot to that. There's this call to endure until the end. You know the end of the story, just endure a little bit further. It's hard to place a chapter division in this narrative because the visions continue on and on and on with the cup of wrath and the winepress of wrath and the bowls of wrath. I'm going to stop at verse 13 and we're going to pick up next week with that. Now, if you would take out your songbooks as we begin to close this morning. We're presented with a very clear image that the battle lines have been drawn up. The commanders have issued their charges. You can choose between the army of the Lamb and the army of the beast. The question is, whose side will you join? Whose side are you on? There is no middle ground. There are no sidelines. There is no ambiguous gray area on this choice. You can join the army of the Lamb or ally with the forces of Satan. You can receive the seal of God or take the mark of the beast for yourself. You can keep your faith in Jesus or you can choose the cup of wrath. Which choice will it be for you? Make your choice today and every day. Let's stand and sing at this time.